morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. I said this several times on this platform, and it is true. And it is a fundamental reality that must be said. And until we resolve it, we are not getting out of this economic mess and political paralysis that we find ourselves in. Zanu PF has been able to promise many things dating back to the time of independence. Many Zimbabweans out there at the time will remember Mugabe's Kutsarushinji promises. Can hardly remember any speech he gave where he didn't promise Kutsarushinji mass prosperity. And yet, even after 5 years of independence, it was becoming increasingly clear that the country was heading for disaster. It didn't slow down Mugabe at all. He continued. He was even more arrogant in his making his promises of mass prosperity with Sarujinji. And I think we can conclude that Zanu PF has been able to make all these outrageous promises because there's known all along that it is not democratically accountable to the people. And so it can confidently promise the moon and deliver hell on earth. This is the reality. Ben, good day to you.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, I've said this before. Zanu PF are a group of underachievers. I will give you a couple of examples. You know, these are people that will fly all the way from Harare to go and open a public toilet in Gweru. These are the same people who will fly out from Harare to go and, show the world that you can bake bread out of a mud oven. These are the people that you are trying, that you are dealing with. So when, you bring out that list of things that they are promising and you look at what they make, what they make a fuss out of, you can see there's a very, very big difference. If these are small things that should have been there, toilets for the public. You don't have to have a whole president travel all the way just to go and cut a ribbon for that. This just shows you the type of government that, that we have in Zimbabwe. One that, they themselves are a laughing stock. This is the government that will host a summit and, try and get the visitors or, the delegates to use certain roads, so that they don't get to see the real Zimbabwe. But foolishly enough, you find out that the world now has become a global village with the internet. The world knows what Zimbabwe is. The world knows, the roads that are there, the potholes that are there. I remember, some, people from South Africa actually laughing to say, if you want to see potholes, go to Zimbabwe. Or every time when they have a pothole in their country, They say our country is turning to Zimbabwe. So there is no need to lie. The world knows, right? We are very, very unfortunate that we have a group of well below underachievers, and they will sing and dance for doing the obvious.
Well, I have said on this platform that Zanu PF rigs elections. That's why the regime has managed to stay in power these last 44 years. The nearest time the country came to holding free, fair, and credible elections was in 2008. For those elections, SADC had worked in the background, piling up pressure on the regime to implement reforms so that the elections are reasonably free, fair, and credible. And the 2008 was the nearest we ever got, the March 2008. When the results started coming out and Zanu PF realized that the party was losing, Mnangagwa, the man who is now the country's president, stepped in and staged an electoral coup. We're still even posted about it. Here is Mnangagwa posting about the 2008 electoral coup.
2008 patakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai ndandiri election agent ya-president. Ma-results abuda tiri pa-party headquarters vamutasa vanga vari secretary vedu ve-administration vamutasa muripi ndafona ndiri kwarusapi komogwenda kwarusapi seka ma-results achibuda kudai vanga aiwa zvako izvo Mnangagwa ndizvo zvako endaenda kumusha ofisi vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose watofunga kuti zani yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini katida sei manje mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira baba gadzirai politburo cabinet musarangarira zvimwe zivi gadzirai chi cabinet asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 ma-results abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35 they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Arusurufaro. We know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
Mnangagwa, and he is the leader of the war veteran in that video clip, Javlani Spanda were posting about, was Zimbabwe's worst electoral-related violence. Over 500 people were murdered during the runoff. Hundreds of thousands were beaten, raped, and seriously injured. And millions were internally displaced in what Mnangagwa was to call Operation Mapotera Papi, which was basically punishing the people of Zimbabwe for having rejected Zanu PF in the March 2008 election. So there cannot be any denying that Zanu PF has blatantly rigged the elections to stay in power. But what we must also address is that there were a number of golden opportunities to implement the democratic reforms and end the Zanu PF dictatorship. Credit where credit is due. SADC refused to give Zanu PF political legitimacy in 2008 and forced Zanu PF to sign the global political agreement, which led to the formation of the government of national unity. The primary purpose of the government of national unity was to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And this is one of the problems then that I really think the people of Zimbabwe have missed the boat. Why they failed, even now with benefit of hindsight, to realize that the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement reforms, and MDC, Triple C leaders sold out. That I cannot understand.
You know, Zanu PF is not just going to be accountable, just for the sake of, doing the right thing. The people of Zimbabwe have to demand accountability, not only from Zanu PF, but the opposition. I mean, people may say, Zanu PF, their followers are foolish, are naive, are gullible, and so forth. But you are finding this on both political fronts, both in the opposition. There is no accountability whatsoever. The opposition has achieved nothing. Zanu PF has achieved nothing. So in total, you can say they are both underachievers. They have not helped the cause in us, being a democratic country at all. So, our problem, I think, is not with Zanu PF, because we know Zanu PF will do what Zanu PF deems fit, and which is to steal, and fatten themselves and get away with it. But it is now up to us to make the right decision going forward. What do we do as a country? What are the solutions that we have? Look, 24 years since the formation of Triple C MDC, which, from the very onset was all about democratic reforms, democratic change. They have done absolutely nothing about those. Instead, they've changed their focus into the,
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
instead they have changed their focus into, presidential elections, MP elections, and so forth, which means they've since tossed away, their mandate, and they have lost the cause. They are of no help whatsoever. But you find we will still follow. So our country now is divided into two: Zanu PF and opposition, Triple C Chamisa Chete Chete, right? Nobody is demanding accountability. Instead, you find we have created them into godlike characters where they are, they never err. They are untouchable. Look, you have, the fighting for in ZANU PF, ED 2030. You find there is also fighting in the opposition to create that godlike status amongst, their beloved, leaders. Where do you then get that opportunity to ask for accountability when you have put that person on such a high pedestal. This is where our problem is. We have forgotten, what that these are servants. When you elect a leader to lead you, whether they be opposition, whether they be in the ruling party, they work for us. We need to get accountability from them. And when we are not, happy with whatever, we must be able to get rid of them. This is why you find both, the similarities in Zanu and Triple C led Chamisa are, are so much. Both of them have, the same similarities if you look closely. It is now up to us, like I said, to make the right decision going forward. And that's the only way we can get ourselves out of this mess. Zanu PF will not want anything to change. Triple C will not want anything to change. Rather, we are the ones that need change. And so we must fight for the change.
Well, here is a video clip of one Margaret Dongo explaining something that most people in Zimbabwe out there have refused to grasp or have failed to grasp. Why Triple C participated in the 2023 elections and why their participation gave Zanu PF legitimacy. Here is her analysis of that situation.
So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way Zanu PF was going to roll alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you? I used my own money. So the idea is to recover. Is it a business where you want to recover your losses? Is it a business? Politics, is it a business where everyone else, when you get in parliament, you want to recover your losses? A good example is now, parliamentarians have been elected. I don't know when we last saw a member of parliament in this area. And some of them, they tell you straight away that we are looking for money so that when it comes back to re-election, we want to feed our people. We want to buy our votes. They're very open. So is that the kind of representation we are looking for? It's a bit unfair. It is unfair.
You spoke about passing the baton to the next generation.
Well, I'll stop it there. I think the most important thing here that Margaret Dongo has brought up is the issue that the opposition participated in the 2023 elections. Even when SADC and the AU said that those processes were flawed, they still stubbornly took up their seats in parliament or in the Senate or in the local authorities. And when they were asked, why are you doing so? They claimed that wherever they had won, those were liberated zones. Chamisa lied to his followers to participate in these flawed elections. What is really disappointing is that even now, with the benefit of hindsight, many of those 2 million or so who voted for Triple C and Chamisa would still not want to accept that Chamisa lied. On the one hand, they accept that yes, the elections were flawed. Zanu PF rigged the elections. But they don't want to accept that Chamisa had lied to them, that he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes. That is the kind of contradiction that is allowed this sorry state in our politics to continue. We really need to start looking at these problems with the urgency the matter demands. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would want to say, what Margaret Dongo said there is nothing but the truth. I mean, we are living this. I fail to understand. It baffles me how even the learned cannot even see something so, so clear that, like I said before, the opposition and Zanu PF are just the same. They have the same similarities. They are all about enriching themselves, enrichment. They don't think about anything beyond. They will cover up and say we are protecting liberated zones. It's not that. They fight to be in parliament. This is why you find the opposition imploded. It's all about parliament. He wanted to be in parliament. Chamisa had his own people. This one had. That's why you find that even double candidates fighting for positions. Yet their mandate was, let's implement reforms to get our country back on track. They have since forgotten all about that. It was a lie from the onset. And people are failing to grasp that. We need new, fresh ideas, competent people who will do the right thing, by the people, which is to fight for our democratic rights. And we have to change our mindset first, such that we can be able to have a vision to see who we can choose going forward. Without that, I must say, the future of Zimbabwe looks very bleak, because 2028, we are going to do the same thing. And mark my words, another 5 years of Zanu PF, after 2028, 2033, the whole country will be in a mess worse more than what it is now.
Zanu PF has been able to make outrageous promises which it has never been able to keep. From the days of Mugabe promising mass prosperity to Sarujinji, to today, Mnangagwa wittering endlessly about Vision 2030. Zanu PF has made these promises confident that they are not democratically accountable, and so they can promise the moon on a silver platter and deliver hell on earth and get away with it. They've done this for the last 44 years, albeit the last 24 years, they've done it with the help of the corrupt, incompetent MDC Triple C. The people of Zimbabwe have to wake up to the reality that if they participate in the coming 2028 elections in the same numbers as participated in 2023, SADC, as much as SADC has got their own weaknesses and faults, will not be to blame for doing nothing to deny Zanu PF political legitimacy. We have to accept that we ourselves are to blame. Why do we keep on participating in flawed elections so flawed, so illegal, that the logical thing to do is to withdraw. Particularly when we know that by participating, we are only giving Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuating our own suffering. This is the message that we must send out to our people, and they must react to it and understand it. I was just going to close, but we'll just respond to a comment there by Two Boy. What did, I suppose he wanted to say, what did you want Nelson Chamisa to do when ZEC failed to deliver the ballot papers? That was part of the vote rigging. ZEC has never been democratically accountable and independent. Those are the democratic reforms that you needed. If you participate knowing that you have got a ZEC that is so corrupt and incompetent, it is in all but name just a Zanu PF department, there to deliver victory to Zanu PF, then the problem is yours. Ask yourself, why did MDC guys fail to implement even one democratic reform to ensure the independence of ZEC during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so? That is the question you should be asking. So, to come back to the issue on the table, Zanu PF will continue making outrageous promises as long as they know they are not democratically accountable to the people. And they've rigged elections for the last 44 years. And they will do so again in 2028. We cannot stop Nelson Chamisa and company participating. What we can do as the people is stop participating. If Zimbabweans do not participate in 2028 elections in the same numbers as participated in 2023, SADC will deny Zanu PF legitimacy. But if we participate in our millions, as happened in 2023, because we believed an idiotic lie from Chamisa, then we only have ourselves to blame. This is the number one message that must be driven home to all Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe cannot afford another rigged election in 2028. It is within our powers to make sure that as much as we cannot stop Zanu PF rigging, we can stop the regime getting political legitimacy. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us this evening. I'll just go back to another comment there from our friend Two Boys. So you attack Nelson Chamisa, not ZEC. Well, if you accept that Nelson Chamisa and company had the opportunity to implement reform to make sure that ZEC is independent, it beggars belief that you seem somehow you still want to expect after you fail to stop ZEC becoming independent, you should still continue pretending that the problem is with ZEC. ZEC, as much as Zanu PF is not going to reform itself, we have been voting MDC CCC to reform, to implement the reforms necessary to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. After 24 years, including the 5 in the GNU, Why have they failed to implement any meaningful reforms? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves. What is the point of electing the opposition, and when they fail to do the task that you set out for them, you do not have the courage to say to them, you have failed? That is at the heart of our problem, of millions of Zimbabweans out there. If Zimbabweans believe Chamisa's idiotic lie that he has plugged vote rigging loopholes again in 2028 and participate in their millions, then it is us we've got to take the blame for it. SADC is not going to deny Zanu PF political legitimacy if the opposition and their supporters participate in 2028 in the millions. That is a fact, a political reality. I keep, I don't know, Ben, whether you want to address this last comment from our friend Tubo.
I would like to say, it is not attacking, Nelson Chamisa, but it's actually saying the truth. Nelson Chamisa in 2020, before the 2023 elections, he guaranteed that no matter what, he included even God, to say these elections, he will win. And a lot of people believed him, and a lot of people made sacrifices to vote for him, knowing fully well that he was lying. So it's not attacking, it's simply saying the truth. We cannot blame Zek because he had said no matter what happens, Zek will not rig these elections. He has strategies in place. So we cannot go back now and say, Zek, why are we not talking about Zek? We know Zek is going to rig the elections. We said Zek is going to rig the elections and Zanu PF would win. But Chamisa was adamant to say he will win no matter, even if they are rigged elections. This is just facts. So we are not attacking. We are simply saying the facts.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think we've covered this point so many times, but I'll just reiterate it. MDC leaders were elected at the launch of the party in 1999 on the understanding that they will bring about the democratic changes necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. That was the political mandate the people of Zimbabwe wanted from MDC. And after 24 years, including the 5 in the GNU, they failed to implement even one token reform. The very fact that there are millions of people there who still do not even know that the GNU of 2008 to 2018 was about implementing the democratic reforms speaks volumes. Even with the benefit of hindsight, you still don't know what the GNU was, the primary purpose of the GNU was. And it is therefore no surprise that when MDC failed to implement even one reform, we didn't even notice it. And the nation is paid dearly for it. That is the truth. I think we need Zimbabweans who are willing to learn from the past. Because if you do not learn from the past, you will participate in 2028. And Chamisa will promise that he has come up with ways of making sure that he wins these coming elections without even one token reform implemented. You believe him, you participate in your millions. At the end of the day, Zanu PF rigs the election, and SADC will turn around and say, well, we told you the election was flawed. We told you need reforms, but you would not listen because you believed an idiotic lie that you can win rigged elections. They're not going to deny Zanu PF political legitimacy under those conditions, as we saw last year. That is the message we've been trying to hammer home. But it's clear that some people are failing to understand, even now with the benefit of hindsight. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. And that is the reality, the political reality we must face and we must deal with. Thank you very much again, Ben. And for those of you who were able to join us tonight, thank you again. And I hope you'll be able to join us tomorrow, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.